Okay, let's get into it. Today we're doing a deep dive focused on a really interesting scientific paper. It's looking critically at a word we hear constantly in global health these days: decolonization.
That's right. And just to be clear up front, this whole discussion is based entirely on the work of Daniel W. Krugman at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. It's their analysis we're exploring today.
Absolutely. It feels like global health is, well, really questioning itself right now, doesn't it? Its history, its structures.
Definitely. And decolonization has become this sort of key term for imagining what change could look like. But Krugman's paper digs into what people actually mean when they use it.
Is the meaning getting a bit fuzzy?
That's exactly the question the paper raises. Is it getting diluted? So our aim here is to unpack Krugman's argument. How is the term being used? What might be the consequences?
And crucially, what does understanding this mean for you if you're working in global health and hearing this term thrown around?
Well, the central point the paper makes is about a gap. A pretty significant gap, actually.
Between what and what?
Between the original, quite radical meanings of decolonization, rooted in actual liberation movements, struggles over land, dismantling systems, and how it often gets used now in global health talk, especially by big institutions.
Right, and the paper uses a specific concept for this, doesn't it? Elite capture. Can you break that down? It draws on Olufemi Taiwo's work, I believe.
It does. So elite capture, as Krugman presents it based on Taiwo, is essentially when powerful groups, institutions, maybe funders, influential figures, take up a radical idea.
An idea meant to challenge the status quo.
Exactly. But they sort of co-opt it. They might soften it, change its focus, use the language, but not necessarily embrace the full disruptive meaning. And often this ends up reinforcing their own position, or at least not fundamentally threatening the existing system.
So applying that to global health, Krugman's arguing that major players, often from the global north, are using decolonization, mainly to discuss internal tweaks.
Pretty much. Things like reforming partnerships, changing funding flows, making internal processes maybe fairer. But it stops short of tackling the really big structures, the historical colonial legacies, the role of capitalism that arguably created many global health inequities in the first place.
Okay. The paper seems to outline two main ways this plays out, two different visions of change being labeled decolonization.
Yes, it contrasts two approaches found in the literature. First, there's what the author calls reformism. This seems to be the dominant one in, say, popular articles or organizational initiatives.
And that focuses on
changes within the existing system. Things like diversifying curricula, making collaborations more equitable on the surface, identifying how current practices might perpetuate unfairness.
So making the existing machine run a bit better, maybe a bit fairer, but keeping the machine itself.
That's a good way to put it. Then the paper contrasts this with transformationalism. Now, this view is less common in the mainstream global health discourse, according to the paper, but it's there in the literature.
And transformationalism is about?
It sees decolonization as much more fundamental. It's about changing global health's entire relationship to the wider world system. It means dismantling those deeper structures: capitalism, ongoing coloniality, imperialism.
So less about internal policies and more about challenging the global economic and political order that global health operates within.
Exactly. It's linked directly to anti-colonial, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist struggles. The paper suggests this transformational view is getting overshadowed by the reformist one.
And Krugman argues this isn't just academic wordplay, that this capture by the reformist view has real consequences.
Absolutely. The argument is that it waters down the power of decolonization as a call for genuine liberation. It might even pull energy and focus away from concrete struggles over resources, land, political power, things central to historical decolonization.
The paper gives an example, doesn't it, about how an institution might frame it.
Yes, it mentions how decolonization might get framed as needing individuals to, say, ask local researchers their opinions or even take a quiz about their own biases.
Which, while may be useful on some level,
risks making a huge systemic political issue seem like it's just about individual behavior or minor procedural changes. It simplifies something incredibly complex.
So for you, listening, if you're a health worker, understanding this helps you maybe read between the lines.
Precisely. It helps you ask. When my organization talks about decolonization, are they talking about tweaking the existing setup? Or are they engaging with the much deeper systemic challenges, the ones rooted in history and political economy that many communities are still fighting?
It helps you see if the language matches the scale of the problem being addressed.
Right. Is it reform or is it aiming for something truly transformative?
If this elite capture is potentially happening, does the paper offer ways to push back? Any alternative directions?
It briefly touches on resisting this, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests things like building solidarity with those broader movements, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-colonial movements.
And looking beyond the usual suspects.
Yeah, learning from activists and scholars outside the traditional global health echo chamber, those who've been deep in these struggles for a long time.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the core takeaway from our dive into Krugman's paper is that decolonization in global health is, well, contested territory.
Definitely. The author views its common use for internal reforms as a potential elite capture, one that might dilute its original radical meaning tied to liberation and systemic change.
It leaves us and you with something to think about. How does recognizing this tension, this difference between reforming the system and transforming it, change how you look at calls for change in your own work?
When you hear decolonization, maybe pause and consider what history is being invoked, what struggles are being connected to, or perhaps overlooked. It's worth reflecting on.